De-Juniorization, the stuff every AFOL's nightmares are made of. Its specific meaning has been diluted over the years, and sometimes grown adults call anything juniorized that is bigger than a 2x4 brick, completely ignoring the fact that they are looking at a toy. The term likely originated around 1997 when the LEGO Group introduced a new line of town sets where parts got a lot more chunky, and it was thought that they could widen the age group that way. Needless to say that this was a major misstep, and it rightfully earned the term juniorization. However, there's another type of junior sets which are, contrary to those town sets, clearly marked as such. This is of course an entirely different case, because these don't try to appeal to everyone and therefore should theoretically even shield regular LEGO sets from juniorization, since the demographics are handled separately now. The 1997 incident definitely deserves its own video at some point, but today we want to have a closer look at this designated junior category. And since we are feeling overambitious, we are going to take the set as an inspiration and not only de-juniorize it, but also do a reverse retrofit so it looks like a classic LEGO pirate set from the 90s. This is Stefan, and today we examine 10679 LEGO Pirate Treasure Hunt. Pirate Treasure Hunt is a junior set that released alongside the 2015 Pirate Wave. The LEGO Group still uses this strategy today to hook a younger audience into a theme, although they don't call them junior anymore, but are branded with the big 4+ instead. There are three main properties that distinguish the set from the rest. They have bigger bricks, brighter colors, and a playful graphic design. Let me preface that I don't necessarily have a problem with these junior sets. If these get kids building instead of staring at an iPad, that's a win in my book. Nonetheless, I think there is still room to be critical about them. But of course trying to keep in mind that this set is not for me, but for a 4-year-old. I'm fully on board with the larger bricks. Fine motor skills can only develop over time, and I have witnessed plenty of kids in my friend circle having trouble handling tiny pieces. However, there are some elements in the set that are going a bit against this idea. Personally, I love the floppy arm skeleton, but you'd think the one with the posable arms would be a bit easier to handle for 4-year-olds. The chain is also a bit of a delicate object, although my main problem here is more with the aesthetics. The whole build is super blocky and consists almost exclusively of straight lines, and the curved detailed chain just looks very alien. There are also some questionable color choices in this set. The grey barrel and the black chest don't make a lot of sense to me, as you would think they would both be made out of wood. The only explanation I can think of is that the designer wanted to make it stand out against the brown boat and to make the golden objects in the chest pop a bit more. If that was indeed the intention, I don't really think it was necessary. For the base, I think the classic or bright green would have been perfectly adequate. It's reasonably close to real grass, and using the very vibrant lime color here just to make it more kids friendly just feels a bit forced. What makes this especially problematic to me is that the lime green just doesn't pair that well with the regular green. I'm also not quite sure what the intention was with these green tiles here in the first place. Pirates of Barracuda Bay utilizes lime green much more successfully. Firstly, it's used in moderation to depict wilted leaves and not as the main plant color. Secondly, it's paired with bright green instead of the classic green, which works a bit better. The boat also comes with some peculiar design choices. I get why they utilized the 2x2 jumper plates, because it's indeed a bit easier to clip the pirate with the peg leg onto it than it would be with the typical 2x4 bench. Unfortunately, that means that you do lose the ability to make proper use of the oar locks. I'm not quite sure I understand what these red cones are supposed to be though. Are they pogies, which are a special kind of gloves that are directly attached to the oars? It feels a bit too modern, and I'm not sure pirates in the 17th century would have had that kind of luxury. Or are they simply there to hook the oars onto the boat like it's shown on the box art? That wouldn't make a lot of sense either, because there wouldn't be enough room to clip the end into a minifigure's hand. But even if we push the cone further down on the oar, our pirate wouldn't be able to grab it regardless because of the elevated bench. Are we supposed to just swoosh it around like this with the oars dangling in the oar locks, just pretending someone is rowing, simply because a 4-year-old might not be capable of posing the minifigure as originally intended? Let me know in the comments if you are able to demystify this. In terms of graphic design, I have a bone to pick with the Jolly Roger flag, which also got a special junior treatment. In my design language analysis, I rated all mainline flags by friendliness. If we add this one, I suppose it would be something like this. I'm not entirely against it, it has a unique creative design, but what bothers me is the inconsistency. This set alone mixes 3 different art styles. The Bicon uses the skull from the 2009 wave, but then in the background an actual skeleton is grinning at us, featuring a slightly modified version of the original 90s one. For the treasure map, again, not a fan of lime green, but I suppose I have to give them credit for at least following through with their color choices and using the same as for the base. However, they only went halfway again because the chest isn't black but brown. The dotted line going in circles is pretty funny though. Okay, wow. For someone saying that they don't have problems with junior sets, I suppose I did nitpick quite a bit here. But I think what always sets LEGO apart from a lot of other toys is that you basically can't outgrow it. Even something like a most basic brick box in bright colors can still be used by the most advanced mock builders, for example as support bricks for mills. The same can't be said about this set, unfortunately. Let's say you're getting older and you want the bigger pirate sets, and this exact scenario is actually promoted in the instructions. Well, the sets really just don't go together visually. If we address my critique and also perform some color swaps to have a more homogeneous color palette, I think it fits a lot better style-wise, and it should still be just as accessible for a 4-year-old. At this point, I think it's worth mentioning that all of this wasn't a problem in the early 90s. If you get a tiny set like 6232 Skeleton Crew, which is a somewhat similar concept, I can still fit it into my big Pirates world 35 years later without any alterations. And if a 4-year-old is supposed to be capable of building Pirate Treasure Hunt, I'm sure they can handle this one. Another avenue that could have been worth exploring is to really lean into the goofy, bright and creative art style and do something like these special Harry Potter sets from the very first wave. They are just so over the top and the colors are so random that you don't even question it. If they had used this wacky Jolly Roger for all the prints and made some more bold color choices instead of just this isolated lime grass, it could have been a really cute and funny set in its own right. But as it stands, it falls between two stools, with its conflicting art style where it's different enough that it doesn't go with the mainline sets, but at the same time not unique enough that it could stand on its own. Nonetheless, that shouldn't stop us from taking the next step and turn this into something we can put into our classic LEGO Pirates world. If you haven't watched my previous reverse retrofit, I recommend it so you can see my usual thought process. First, we have to choose what exact style we want to use as a foundation, since classic Pirates evolved a bit throughout its run. Given the white panel, I decided to look more towards the later pirate sets like Shipwreck Island, because it did make more use of white elements as well. Same as with the Redbeard Runner that was released in the same year and features a lot of white ornaments. Both sets also use blue as an accent color, so I thought it would be fun to lean into that more heavily. But not wanting to tease you any longer, here's the result. Since this is not only a reverse retrofit, but we are also de-juniorizing the original set, I'm taking a bit more liberty here and I'm adding some additional detail. Instead of just having a solid front, a small column and an arch adds some architectural interest. A classic LEGO pirate set can also never have enough lamps or torches, but to switch things up, I used the building technique from the Time Cruiser's Mystic Mountain time lap. In pretty much all of the official sets we got, the pirates live almost exclusively in shipwrecks or structures that look like they were made out of ship parts. So it makes for a nice change to further explore what an actual pirate house with windows could have looked like within the 90s design language. Be aware of rising housing costs, the pirates are entering the real estate market. For the pirate flag, I came up with this slightly unconventional attachment to make it a bit more interesting instead of just sticking it on the top. The boat can of course be adapted quite easily to the typical 90s boat design. Blackjack Hawkins comes close to the minifigure in the junior set, and he actually looks quite good with the skull bicon instead of his usual attire. After completing the build, I felt a bit bad for the Spanish Armada because they are so underrepresented. So I decided to create a variant for them as well. We really don't have a lot to work with, as all we ever got is this kind of sentry box, but green is clearly the main accent color and red somewhat of a secondary one if you consider the boat and the flag. For the plant, I had to switch to the original leaf element since the other one didn't exist back then. The cones are of course reddish brown in the junior set and don't exist in the old brown at all. But at least the round bricks came with the western sets in that color in 1997, just in time for the last wave of the classic LEGO Pirates run. The North American exclusives hint at how Pirates could have evolved further with brown elements if the theme hadn't been cancelled. As I was experimenting with these builds, it reminded me a lot of the popular minifigure habitat mocks, so I thought, why stop here if we could expand this little series even further? In case you favor the original pirate waves, these might be for you. The blue coat fortresses usually don't have any kind of ivy, moss or overgrown vegetation and usually just feature palm trees. Regardless, to match the greenery that we see in the print and to sell the idea that this is an abandoned place, I added a small plant element above the window. The LEGO designers had a fantastic sense for when and how to add detail. Broadside's brick, for example, is largely white and yellow, which, especially by today's standards, one might consider a bit colorless. Lagoon Lockup, on the other hand, has the small blue-red awning and it's breaking up the yellow-white colored facade very effectively. At first I considered doing the same. However, on a bike tour through the Alsace region in France, I fell in love with the colorful window shutters that you can see everywhere and I utilized those instead. Just as with the awning, it's a highly functional yet simple way of making the facades look more attractive, both in real life and in the LEGO build. To capture the look of the first wave pirates more closely, I swapped the window for prison bars. Rock Island Refuge specifically also makes good use of palm leaves, so I attached two of them to a flagpole to really drive home the overgrown, abandoned vibe. And to round off the series, of course we also have to include the islanders. This was a bit more tricky to pull off. Instead of using an oil lamp, I wanted to use the neon orange flame, but the color clashes a bit with the red structure. So I came up with this idea to build a light grey rock formation, which allowed me to create some separation between the orange and the red. After completing the series, I realized how far I strayed from the source material when I put the Islanders version next to it. It reminded me a bit of the game Telephone that we played when we were kids, where you whisper a message from person to person and compare the original to the end result. Each time a small part of the message might get lost or altered, which by itself might seem like a minor change, but the accumulated end result can be quite different. I also recreated the models digitally and made instructions for them. If you're interested, you can find the links in the description so you can easily create shopping lists on Bricklink. Pick your favorite and it should be fairly affordable. I built them with era-accurate 90s parts, but if you want to save some money, you can easily swap some of them for more modern alternatives. The lattice window and the skeleton have some more affordable variants, for example. In either case, it will make for a great little build on your desk. If you have a stressful day at work, take a deep breath, sip your coffee and dream of the great adventures this pirate experienced and how he peacefully retired with his treasure on this little island. I hope you enjoyed this reverse retrofit de-juniorize telephone game experiment, and I'll see you next time when Stefan stacks stats again.